First of all, thank you again to all of our attendees who are in the audience, our panelists, and our moderator. Thank you for being here. My name is Cody. I'm the Director of Coaching Operations at Paragon One, and we're back for our fourth Bridges webinar episode. That's 4 out of 7. So we have 3 more left, and don't forget to register. We'll drop a link for that later here in the Zoom chat. Each webinar, like the purpose of Paragon One, is designed to further equip young people and help them get from where they are to where they want to be in college and their careers. So to help facilitate that bridge building, we are really excited about our lineup here today of panelists who are definitely committed to giving back in a lot of different ways. And one of those is what we're going to talk about today: how to find your career mentor. So as we get started, I want to share with you a couple quick tips. Remember to get yourself situated in a well-lit area, and hopefully there's little to no noise. Turn your camera on. Be sure to take notes, and we'd love to have you be engaging in the Zoom chat to share your affirmations and drop your questions along the way. And if everyone is settled, I'd love to pass the baton off to our moderator, Anna Esaki-Smith. Anna, how are you?
Hi, fine, thanks. Thanks, Cody. Welcome everybody to the 4th episode of Paragon One's webinar series Bridges, and today we're focusing on how to find your career mentor. Finding a career mentor can make a world of difference in terms of your careers, but how do you locate one? So it's a big question. As Cody mentions, I'm Anna Esaki-Smith. I am co-founder of an education research consultancy called Education Rethink. I actually straddle 2 worlds. I was trained as a journalist. I work for Newsweek and Reuters, and I currently contribute stories to Forbes magazine, focusing recently on the disruptive impact of the pandemic on higher education. But I also specialize in internationalization strategies for universities and private education companies. I recruited international students for UC Berkeley's non-degree programs. So I traveled the world looking for the best and the brightest. As Cody mentions, we have a stellar group of speakers today, just an outstanding panel. Let me just do some quick introductions. We have Cortland Armstrong. He's head of account management for global marketing solutions at Facebook. He leads a team of 6 sales leaders and 40 account managers to empower more than 1,000 small and medium-sized businesses to reach their full potential on Facebook. He is a graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point. He has also worked at Life Fitness and briefly served as a tank commander in the US Army. So a fascinating bio there. And outside of work, Cortland is busy with spending time with his 6 kids and his wife. He told us that he recently moved, so I'm sure that was a huge endeavor. And he also enjoys collecting bourbons from his hometown of Louisville, Kentucky, although he's speaking to us from Chicago. So welcome to Cortland. We also have Steve Cumming-Deer. He is the head of global people analytics at Accenture and has over 15 years of experience focusing on operational effectiveness and developing talent. He serves on the adjunct faculty of several universities where he teaches business and healthcare management courses. Steve enjoys teaching yoga and serving on nonprofit boards, as well as performing with bands and orchestras in his local community. So a big up for musicians. And he lives in the Minneapolis area with his partner and their 3 dogs. So a welcome to Steve. And last but not least, we have Drew Mccaskill. He is LinkedIn's career expert, where he's responsible for helping the world understand how LinkedIn creates opportunities, economic opportunities for the global workforce. Previously, Drew served as head of diversity and inclusion for global sales and marketing at Facebook, and was a senior vice president of global communications and multicultural marketing at Nielsen. Despite the fact that he's wearing a New York Yankees cap, he is originally from Mississippi, but currently lives in Harlem and is a graduate of Morehouse College and the Goizueta Business School at Emory University. So welcome to all 3. Thank you so much for being with us today. Well, let's kick off things with just sort of a broad question. I'm sure the audience would love to know sort of a bit of your personal history. I went over it very briefly, but could you tell us a little bit of your pathway to where you are now from when you graduated from university, and maybe a bit about who your career mentor was professionally? So I'm gonna kick things off with Cortland.
Sure, and thank you all for the invite and invitation. So I think the tagline for my career is my career has not been a straight line journey, right? It's had kind of turns and twists, and it's been unpredictable. But the one thing that has held true is my commitment, my love of leadership, which really, I guess geared me or drove me to West Point, right? So West Point is a military institution. It's where I learned the power and the importance of leadership in serving other people. So being that servant leader. Graduated in 2008 as a tank commander. Did a short stint in the military, but really, again, unpredictably, got out sooner than I anticipated. And because I had this question of, all right, finding myself, if I'm not, a military leader, who am I? I decided to go into engineering, and I'm not an engineering major, right? And so that was not something I studied in school, but I like the title. I like the prestige that went along with being known as engineer. That was my first lesson. And don't chase titles. I did not like that work. And I got out very soon after going down that path, but I found my way into GE. And again, GE for me was a place where I learned about corporate leadership. So I served in project management all the way into sales, business development. Went abroad, lived in London for a stint with GE. Left GE, worked at Life Fitness, which is a fitness equipment manufacturer. That company was acquired by private equity, which is, again, a great experience and learning opportunity. It was quite painful to go through that transaction, but again, learned so much from that. And now I'm at Facebook. And again, just following this throughput of leadership. I have the privilege of leading 6 sales leaders who also lead 50 account managers now. So we've grown from 40 to 50 in the last couple of weeks. And we serve more than 1,000 small to medium-sized businesses who are trying to acquire customers or gain market share on our platform, right? So hopefully, Anna, that answers your question.
Yeah, thanks, Cortland. And just if I could ask, did you have a career mentor at any point in your path?
Of course. I learned the power of mentorship through my military experience. And people don't realize that the military is built on, this notion that mentorship is a part or synonymous with leadership. And so to be a leader, you have to be a mentor and a mentee at some point in your career. And so with that knowledge, I started my academic and scholastic experience with a mentor, right? And he's walked with me throughout my journey from the military into the private sector. We've been friends and really had this relationship for the last 15 years, but it really for me started in the military, in school, knowing and understanding the power of having someone guide you along a path, even if that path doesn't correspond with the path you want to traverse, having that oracle of sort that can help me peer around corners and inform me, because my path was not like any other path that I had in my family or in my inner circle. So I needed that outside perspective to help me along the way, right?
Yeah, thank you. And I think the fact that you had sort of not a straight trajectory in your career path and not to buy into titles, I think those are very wise tips for our audience. Steve, if I could ask you that same question, can you give us a snapshot of how you got to where you are today and any mentors that you might have had?
Sure, absolutely. And thanks for having me. Yeah, I started my choice of study. I really wanted to be a doctor ever since I was a kid, and went into undergrad thinking I was going to pursue a career in medicine, and I realized I wasn't very good at the hard sciences. And that's advice I've given to people over the years too. It's like, if you feel like you're struggling with what you think you're intended to do or what you've been pushed to do, and like it just doesn't feel natural for you, like make a different choice, choose your path, right? So that's what I did. I knew I wanted to work in healthcare. I knew I wanted to work with people. And so I self-designed a program around healthcare management, HR. I wanted to have sort of a technical background as well. So I added some MIS and CIS courses in there as well. But I sort of self-designed that so I could have the experience that I really wanted to have. I then went to grad school right after finishing undergrad, and did my studies in healthcare and HR specifically because I wanted to pursue a career in HR, which never happened until very recently. And so I spent the first, several years of my career doing, increasingly progressive management, responsibility roles in healthcare organizations. Fairly unremarkable in terms of a mentorship, from the mentorship perspective, because I worked for companies that didn't really push mentorship or sort of personal relationship development until I came to Accenture, which was 10 years ago, and I started in consulting. I was hired in to do HR consulting in the healthcare industry. It makes a lot of sense based on my background, but I quickly realized that really the consulting sort of space for me wasn't a good fit. I wanted something that was more predictable and kind of consistent, whereas the consulting sort of lifestyle is very much not that. But I still really loved Accenture. And so where sort of the mentorship piece comes in for me is I identify as part of the LGBTQ community. I was part of the Pride Employee Resource Group leadership team. And through that, I got the opportunity to meet some of our senior executives at Accenture. I specifically met this guy named Marco, who is one of our client account leaders, very prominent in our firm, and is an gay executive at Accenture. And through conversations with him, I was just sort of sharing that I didn't feel like consulting was the right path for me. I wasn't sure what to do. I was kind of at this point where it's like, I probably won't stay with Accenture. And through that, just sort of being open and honest with him. And I wasn't even really doing it to try to get advice from him. Fast forward a little bit, but basically he was able to connect me with a career path based on getting to know a little bit about my background and my interests and what I was good at and what I like to do. Got me connected with a career path at Accenture that offered me advancement opportunity. It offered me a role that I really enjoy, that I could be very good at. It was a space that I loved. And through that, I then, have had other opportunities that I probably would never have had if it weren't for that sort of conversation and that connection and him offering to mentor me through that process. So I would consider Marco a mentor in my career that probably helped me make a significant shift that kept me at Accenture, but also put me on a path that, enabled me to have, advancement opportunity and find a space that I really enjoy and I can be successful at. And so, give him a lot of credit for that, because if it weren't for that conversation and that connection, it could have gone very differently for me.
Great, thanks, Steve. Yeah, that's amazing how influential a mentor can be in shaping a career. Drew, if I could ask you, how did you end up at LinkedIn? What was your pathway to your position now?
My pathway to LinkedIn is similar to what Cortland said. It was definitely not a straight line. I'll say though that one of the things that about pathways is that the thing that has been consistent for me is that the skills that I use across all of my jobs are kind of the same, right? So James Baldwin has this quote where he says that you have to go the way that your blood boils, right? And so some of the things that you find that you're just naturally good at and inclined at, those skills versus those jobs that you do are oftentimes those things that are consistent, right? About where you see, where you find roles and opportunities that you kind of light up when you walk into the office versus like turn down as soon as you see the company logo and you're walking into the building. And so for me, I had planned on being an educator. I come from a family of educators. My parents were educators. My dad was an educator before he sold out to corporate America and worked for big oil. All four of my grandparents were educators. And so when I got to Morehouse, I was like, I'm going to teach English lit, and I'm going to do critical theory. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be an educator like the rest of my family. I did an exchange program at Dartmouth, met an executive at one of those corporate mixers, right? And the only reason why I went was because the food was always amazing, right? So the Black Alumni Association was having something, and she was an executive at Coca-Cola. The food was going to be good. I knew that. I went to it, had a conversation. I really didn't know much about corporate marketing at all. She and I had a conversation where I was just really, really honest with her. And she was like, what do you like to do? And I was like, I'm a great writer. I'm a storyteller. I told her a couple of jokes about how I was a country boy from Mississippi that hated the snow in his face every day at Dartmouth and in Hanover. And I was ready to go back to Atlanta because I was on exchange for Morehouse. And she said, hey, storytelling is what marketers do. There's an opportunity at Coke to intern. And I was like, but how do I do that? She was like, you ask to do it and give people the opportunity to tell you yes or no. And I was like, but like, I've got classes. She was like, you are in college to figure out what it is you want to do professionally. I'm giving you an opportunity to do something professionally. Go ask if you can do it and then come back to me. I asked, they said yes. What I learned of that, and the only reason why I bring that up is because you'd be surprised at how much in life and in your career and in jobs is negotiable. Like there are rules for everything, right? But you'd be surprised at how much is negotiable. Like I'm a Sunday school kid, so I've always heard, biblically that like you have not because you ask not, right? And so don't be afraid to ask for things that are slightly outside of the box in your career. I'm not afraid to ask for more money. I'm not afraid to ask for more opportunity. I'm not afraid to ask for, to live someplace else. I'm doing this call right now from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, right? Because I flew here to be with my family today. I'm not in New York and I'm not in my place in Atlanta, right? So you have not because you ask not, right? The greatest mentor lesson that I learned, because you can look on my LinkedIn and tell that I interned at Coca-Cola. That pivoted me to public relations. I was in tech PR for a long time. I was the Black guy in tech, right, at a lot of those events, because there were not a lot of Black folks in tech marketing at that particular time. And I pivoted from there, went on to B school because I wanted to have a differentiated experience. I wanted to learn more about operations and not just about communications and marketing that I was learning and doing the work. All of my peers in PR and communications at the time, they had masters in journalism. I didn't want to be like everybody else. I thought, let me get an MBA so I can have a differentiated offering, right? I'm going to always be a great storyteller, always be a great writer, but understanding business at a much more macro level, that'll help me out. So I was always about, I know what my core skills are. How do I enhance those and make them differentiated? After B school, I went to Weber Shandwick, New York, which is a big blue chip PR firm, was senior vice president of the corporate practice there. But I also knew that I wasn't going to be there long. I mean, the CEO of Weber and I know each other. I've hired Weber in jobs afterwards. So I say this full-throatedly. I went to Weber knowing that Weber was a vehicle and not a destination. I knew that I needed a big blue chip agency on my resume so that I could pivot to the corporate side and be in-house as a senior leader. And so I sort of charted that path. I knew that, again, that job was a great job. I did award-winning work there, but it was a vehicle. It was not a destination. It was an opportunity to get me to where I wanted to be. I was senior vice president of global communications for Nielsen. Everybody who knows Nielsen, we're a global ratings company. People think of us as the TV ratings, but we actually do consumer data in 120 countries around the world. And I led the global aspects of corporate communications. I did a stint in Shanghai while I was there. I was in Shanghai for a year. Big Black guy who doesn't speak Mandarin. Happy to tell you that story over a cocktail. But I did that for a year. And I then, in the course of that, I fell in love with diversity and inclusion. It's hard to be a Black gay executive in agency life and in corporate life without ending up being a diversity champion or a diversity example. Right. So I found that I didn't want to be just the guy that people added to the photo so that there was a Black person in it when they were showing the pictures for corporate functions. I wanted to make sure that I was doing work outside of my day job to make sure that at least there were 2 Black folks or 3 Black folks or some women or some people who were Latin or the full 9 yards, right? I wanted to leave all of those spaces more diverse than how I found them. That, was a pivot point for me. When I left Nielsen, I went to Facebook and took on a diversity role, and I led diversity for the global communications and marketing, sales and marketing practice, which was perfect because that's the world I'd come from. I had a great, I'm going to date myself here, but a great Rolodex of people who look like me and look diverse and had diverse backgrounds that I could help really guide that work in a really different way. I got to LinkedIn because LinkedIn just made me an offer to do some things that I couldn't refuse. And that was to be a part of a team that is going to champion economic outcomes for everyone. And they needed someone who had experience understanding diverse consumers and people with diverse backgrounds. They needed someone who understood business as well as doing well, as well as doing good. I had that balance. That's my career story. Happy to answer questions about it. But the mentoring piece, for me, the best mentoring advice I ever got was from someone who denied me the opportunity to be their mentee. There's a senior Black executive at Coca-Cola, iconic. I knew that she had interns and was mentor to other Black folks, particularly in the Atlanta University Center. You got to remember Coca-Cola's in Atlanta. And I got my tie, iron shirt, had my elevator pitch ready for her, saw her in the marble rotunda at Coca-Cola and said, "Ms. Jones, I gave my little speech. I want you to be my mentor." And she said, "Andrew, that was both compelling and incredibly articulate. And I'm going to say no." And it was like a gut punch, right? Like, cause like, I was like, "But you're amazing. I want you to be my mentor." She's like, "Why did you ask me to be your mentor?" And I said, "Because you're amazing and da, 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 da." She said, "Yes, all those things are true. But you also asked me because I'm Black." And she said, "What you need to do when you're looking for a mentor is you need to find a mentor, someone who is doing the work that you eventually want to do extremely well. You cannot wait to get a mentor to find, you cannot wait for there to be a Black executive to be your mentor before you find a mentor." She was like, "Because the unfortunate truth is that there are not enough of us to go around. You need to find a mentor, regardless of their demographics, who's doing well, doing the things that you want to do and doing them well, and who's open to sharing with you." And so as much as that was a gut punch to me, because I was so enamored by it, this was going to be my mentor, what she did was she gave me freedom to go out and think about mentorship differently. She gave me the freedom to go out and say, there's this person who's of Indian descent who actually is doing the work in tech that I want to do. Maybe I should talk to him. Here's this old white guy who's actually doing the work that I want to do. Let me go out and cold call him, right? She gave me the freedom to do that. And that's one of the best pieces of mentor advice that I've ever gotten, because my mentors have been incredibly diverse. But the thing that has been consistent is that they were all doing things that were important and related to what I wanted to do. And They were all invested in me, regardless of my demographic.
Right. Thanks, Drew, for that synopsis. That was really useful. I'm sure at this point, our audience wants to have all three of you as their mentors. So let's jump into the next question. And we have a lot of students who want to ask questions. So I want to ask the panelists to maybe give their audience 2 tips on just to delve into the meat of the matter. Where do they locate appropriate mentors? I mean, they know a lot about internships, they know a lot about externships like the ones that Paragon One helps facilitate, but with regards to mentors, where do they find them and why would somebody want to mentor them? So maybe sort of a succinct 2 tips. And I'm going to start with Steve.
Well, so I think if the company that so I'll just give you like one example would be, at Accenture, we offer mentoring programs. So I think if you're somewhere that, whether it's at your company or your school or wherever, that offers mentor programs, absolutely take advantage of them. That seems very obvious, but many people don't do that. And I think that they offer a way to immediately get connected with people and find people that can become, have complementary skills and experiences to yours that can help you. And if there aren't at least obvious programs, ask people about them and ask, if there are programs available that just you may not know about and that you can take advantage of. And I think if there aren't structured mentoring programs where you are, I think as Drew was saying, people that you look up to or that you have a strong interest in working with or learning from, it never hurts to ask and be very well prepared, obviously, like Drew was saying, and have your case for why the mentorship would be beneficial for both you and them, because mentoring is beneficial for the mentor as well. It may seem like very one-sided, but it's not. And just be brave and ask and put it out there. So, I mean, for me, it's just, don't be afraid to ask someone that you look up to or that you trust or that you're very interested in working with or learning from, that, to be a mentor and serve in that capacity.
Steve, if I can ask you to unpack that a little bit more with regards to what the mentor gets, what can you describe? I'm sure you've been asked to mentor young people. What do you get from being a mentor?
Well, I guess first thing I would say is not everyone wants to be a mentor. I don't think any of us should fool ourselves into thinking that everyone prioritizes mentoring, because they don't. And so you may get a rejection, maybe for different reasons than Drew got, for example, which was very valid. But some people just may not value that, and so it is what it is. But for people who do value mentorship, like those of us that are on this call, for me, it's personal. It's just sort of a personal. It's like being a good steward of the community, whether it's other LGBT people that I'm looking to mentor. I teach at the University of Minnesota. I teach undergrads, professional development and career readiness courses. So that's sort of a way for me to mentor and coach. But it's just a way of giving back. For me, it's a personal feeling of satisfaction that I'm giving back and doing some good. And we all sort of, for me at least, need to feel that sometimes, that you're just contributing something positive back to the world, whether it's through mentoring or something else. But I don't know, there's just a personal satisfaction. I don't know that I can really easily define it necessarily, but it just feels good to help others.
No, there's a lot to be said about feeling good and giving back, Steve, so I understand that. Cortland, if I could ask you as well, maybe a couple of tips to our audience about where they can, should they do it at university, when they graduate, at an internship? And also, what do you get from being a mentor to a young person?
I'm on mute. So two things, two tips. One, power of reflection, right? To know who you are and where you want to go, and form an opinion or having a career hypothesis that you want to kind of test out in those conversations will drive those conversations, who you engage, right? And so, in how I thought about how I acquired my mentors, I was in the Army. There's a direct path in the Army that you take, and that person was on that path. And I was like, obviously, I want to be on that path. I want to kind of reverse engineer that path for myself. So it made sense for me to engage that particular individual, right? But I had an understanding of who I was and where I wanted to be that guided that selection process for me, right? Then the second tip is, the power of observation. And so being able to observe the behaviors, the skills, the people that you admire, and unpack why you admire them will guide both the selection and the conversation that ensues when you make the pitch, right? To Steve's point of view, right? So when I select a mentor, I have a specific thing that I admire. That I say, hey, I admire how you carried yourself in that meeting, and I want to unpack that with you. Can you spend, 3 meetings where we kind of unpack how you got to where you are, and help me understand this one skill that you have that I want to develop over time, right? So the power of reflection, the power of observation, I've leveraged to both seek and find the mentors that have guided me through my path, right? The thing that I get from mentorship or mentoring other people is one, empathy through proximity. And so I work in an organization, and once you start to traverse and climb the ladder, it becomes harder to understand the real pulse of the organization, the heartbeat of the organization. And by trust and building trust with my mentees, they can come to me and say, hey, here's the real deal. Here's the truth of the matter. I mean, we say X, but we mean Y. And usually as a leader, you have to filter so many layers from a communication perspective to get to the real core meat of the matter. And through my mentees and through trust and confidentiality, I can cut right through it. I can get straight to the point, the root, the heart of the matter, right? I think the other thing that I get is perspective, Right? I'm now becoming the old guy. I'm now like I guess an elder millennial is what I'm called now, right? An elder. I'm like, what is that? But again, as I grow and as I mature, I understand that I still don't know it all, and nor will I ever. And there's always an opportunity to have a bidirectional value exchange between me and my mentee in terms of them teaching me things that I don't know, and vice versa. So perspective and the ability and the importance of widening your mental aperture through those conversations is super important.
Great, thank you. Great, thanks very much, Cortland. Drew, maybe you can give us 2 tips on, where they might locate a good mentor, and then we're gonna start with student questions. So, but Drew, share some wisdom with us.
I'll share some tips. I don't know how wise they are, but tip number 1 is if you are at university right now, one of the best things you can do and one of the easiest things you can do is you're still a customer, right? So one of the things that you should get from in your customer relationship with university is go and talk to whoever runs the alumni association on campus and think about the jobs or the companies where you might want to eventually work. Have a conversation with the folks in the alumni affairs office and say, hey, I would love to work at Facebook. Who of our alums is at Facebook? Help me identify who those folks are. Do you have a relationship there? I'd love to do that. I'd love to, could you ask them about their internship program? Could you help me set up an introduction? I'll take it from there, right? And your alumni association, that's one of the great benefits that they should be giving to you as well as to alums, is connecting alums to the next generation. So your alumni association and the office of the alumni affairs is a great place for you to start thinking about how to make career connections. Your network begins in undergrad. You can start your network in while you're still at university. Here's the thing, is that a person, this is LinkedIn data, so boom, I'm going to give it to you for free, is that a person is 7 times more likely to get a job when they have a connection at that particular company, right? So that's how important your network is. And so networking is about mentorship, and it's about a whole lot of other things. The second thing I would do is I would go out and create a LinkedIn profile. And you can start to go and look at the types of jobs that people have. When I was in undergrad, I didn't know that half of the jobs that I interact with and some of the jobs that I've done even existed, right? I literally did not know that there were jobs in diversity and inclusion and equity strategies and all the things that I'm working on now at LinkedIn. I didn't know those jobs existed. And so go on, build a LinkedIn profile. Remember, it is a social media network, but it's a professional network. So no beach selfies unless you plan on being a surf instructor, right? So like go on, create a professional profile. There are tons of tools to help you do that. But I would say also that there's a great opportunity there to go and look at and find folks and do research there about people who are doing the type of work that you're interested in. And you can cold call or reach out to people and ask them, hey, I've seen your work here. I've read this article about you. I saw your LinkedIn profile. I had a conversation with folks at the Alumni Association, and I'd really like to have a conversation about what it is that you do. Maybe you can help guide me, but just a one conversation, if that leads to something more like mentorship, that'd be awesome too. But let's see how it goes. And the reason why I say that's really important for you to know while you're at university is that there is no time. There's no time like the time right now where people are so excited and willing to help you figure stuff out. At no other point in your career or professional journey are people going to be more inclined, excited to help you out than at the beginning. I can tell you, I'm 44, about to be 45. I'm deep into my career, and at no point in my career have people been more open to helping me out than when I was in undergrad.
I think that's an outstanding point, that people are willing to help young people. I mean, all 3 of you are here speaking to our audience. So I think that's such a wise piece of advice for our audience. I'm going to start fielding some questions from our audience. We have a question from Henry Mayer at Hamilton College, and I'm going to talk to David Wong after that, and Grace. So Henry, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Hey everyone, thanks for being here. I've really enjoyed hearing from you all. So my question is what is a good way for someone to reach out to a potential mentor what do you kind of want to hear from us?
Okay, so why don't I ask Steve to answer Henry's question?
You asked what's the best way to reach out. I mean, I think that's going to be based on the context of the relationship, or how you know them or how you've met them, perhaps. I mean, and specifically, for example, I work completely virtually, so I'm most likely to get an email request to be a mentor or something like that. I don't know that there's a right or wrong way here. Others may have different thoughts, but it's really going to be based on the context of the relationship, the degree to which you know someone. In terms of what we want to hear, I mean, for me, if someone's reaching out for me to mentor them, it's nice to know that they've maybe done a little research about me or my background, or what they, to the extent that they can get information about me at the company or what I've done, and maybe have already thought about what the shared connections are that we might have, whether it's shared interests or experience, or I've done something specific that you're interested in knowing more about, or whatever it might be. But it's nice to know that you've done a little bit of your homework, right? To say, because what that tells me is you really are invested and you care, and you've sort of done that legwork, and it makes me want to invest back more so in you than I might if it was just sort of a blind introduction and you hadn't thought through like why you want to be a mentee.
Hey, Cortland, could I ask you to answer Henry's question as well about how potential mentees can reach out to potential mentors?
Yeah, I agree with Steve. I mean, having that social connection works. I mean, it's really tough when you get a cold reach out, because it's a cold reach out. You don't know the individual, what their aspirations are, or what have you. But I'm not opposed to that, right? I think people need help, and people who lack the resources and the natural networks need the most help. And I'm here for that. So I don't mind the cold reach out, but when you come from not having any social connection, you have to come strong, right? So you got to do research, right? You have to come with a story, and you have to understand and be very specific on your why. Like, why me and why you? Like, if you can articulate and tell me that story that really starts to help me understand how I can help, because that's really the question, is how can I help? Then we can start to have that conversation, to build that relationship, to build the skills and the experiences necessary to get you from where you are to where you need to be, right?
Great, thanks, Cortland, and thanks, Henry, for that great question. We've got another question coming up, which I'd like to ask to Drew to answer. It's from David Huang from Christian Brothers University. Go ahead, David.
David, you might be on mute.
Okay, sorry about that.
All good.
My question is it ever too late to find a career mentor? And my second question is, are career mentors only for entry level, or do they also have career mentors for up higher level positions?
All right, so I don't think that it's ever too late to have a career mentor. Everybody's career path is different. If I were to pivot to something totally different right now, I would look to find a mentor to help me make that pivot, right? I think that you have, I think after a bit of time, after you've been in the workforce for a little while, if you're a grandpa like me, David, you'll find that I don't have as much mentors anymore as I have a personal board of directors. I have a group of people who help advise different aspects of my career, right? Like I'm really interested in board level service, right? I've done that in the nonprofit world. I'm interested in doing it in the for-profit world. And I have sort of someone who's on a group of people who help advise me on my career. I have a couple of my friends who are working dads, and my partner and I are talking about surrogacy right now. So they're advising me on those things. So I think that as you get older and are more clear about what it is that you need as it relates to advice, I think that will shift a little bit. But you absolutely need a mentor right now. You will eventually need more mentors to help you decipher different aspects of things, right? And I think that you should be open to peer-to-peer mentor as you get older and more and further along in your career. There are oftentimes things that your fellow people who are blazing the same trail that you are in other industries or at other companies, that they can help you navigate even more so than someone who may be 5 jobs or 3 jobs or 3 levels removed from what you're experiencing right now today, right? So
thank you. Thanks, Drew. Thanks, David. Maybe Drew will share his Rolodex with you. Or his Rolex. I don't know. I get confused. Thanks, David, for that great question. We're going to move on to Grace Williams at Clark University, and followed by Abiola and then Taylor. But Grace, please ask your question.
Hi. So my question, and I'm also actually one of the interns at Paragon 1 as well. So yeah. So my question is, I just want to know what is the most important lesson that you guys have learned during your mentorship process or being a mentee?
Great question, Grace. Why don't I'm going to ask Cortland if you could answer Grace's question.
For sure. So I think the thing that I still think about, actually, that I still carry with me is this notion you have to commit to the grind, right? Good things come to those who hustle, and we try to overcomplicate things. We try to create these frameworks and career development and all that good stuff, right? And it's warranted, but at its core, I have been instilled with this notion that you will not outwork me. Like I am here to grow. I'm here to learn. I'm here to get the job done. And that was one of the first lessons that my mentor instilled in me is I have a lot of great advice for you, but foundationally, you have to do the job, and the job takes some work and some, you have to commit to the grind. So that is one of those lessons I continually think about as I traverse the career path.
Cortland, if I can ask, when you say commit to the grind or that hustle, like, can you define what is hustle? Is that chutzpah? Is that being on time? Like, what are the components there? And actually, coming from a man from the military, I would be interested to know what you think.
Yeah, I think it's, if you oversimplify it could be just your ability to work hard, but it's more than that, right? It's your ability to find answers and to problem solve, right? It's your ability to be resilient and act resiliently in the face of adversity. It's your ability to engage with agility, mental agility, in situations that are super ambiguous, right? We, in the military, again, we deal with ambiguity on a daily basis, and your ability to handle that with grace and composure sets the stage for this notion of, again, hustle, the grind. Like, these are the constants, I guess, that you will experience throughout your career. Your ability to conquer and control those constants in a way, again, that drives you forward is what I mean by the hustle, right? Again, it's not just your ability to work hard, because anyone can work hard. It's your ability to understand those constant variables, manage and control those variables as much as you can, and again, deal with adversity and ambiguity in a way that allows you to move forward, even if you don't know what that destination is, right?
Great. Thanks, Cortland. Thanks very much. Thanks, Grace, for that terrific question. The next question I'm going to ask for Steve, because it kind of relates to what you were talking about earlier. It's from Abiola, and then it's followed by Taylor and Amia. So Abiola.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us or welcoming us today. One of my questions was, how do you make sure that you are a good mentee, or how should we be looking to give back to our mentors when it seems like they're the one that's giving to us all the time?
So Steve, I remember you had mentioned about mentors giving back. How can a mentee be a good mentee?
Well, as a mentee, be a good mentee by being prepared, like whatever you decide in terms of how you're going to manage your communications and interactions with your mentor, whether it's you meet once a month for coffee or whatever it might be, just, be prepared, because your mentor, as I think we've all recognized, your mentor is taking time out of their day, whatever it might be that they have going on, to spend time with you. And I'm sure they want to do that, otherwise they wouldn't do it, but still be respectful of their time by being prepared and have topics in mind that you want to talk about, or whatever it might be. And I think to get to some of the other questions that have been asked about, like, how do you sort of manage the relationship with your mentor? I mean, it's going to be based very much on the rapport that you develop with your mentor. There's really no right or wrong way to do that, but it's, you're going to have to take the cues that you're given by your mentor and go from there and kind of use your interpersonal skills to be responsive to those cues. And in terms of giving back to the mentor, I've actually never really thought about that, but I think it's just making sure that you show appreciation and gratitude to them. And again, in a way that makes sense for the context and the relationship that you have. And if they ever, perhaps they want for their own leadership development to have feedback from people they've mentored, be responsive to that request and provide real and honest, open, candid feedback about how they were as a mentor, and offer, if there are opportunities for you to, like, say you work together at your company, opportunities for you to help them with projects or things like that might actually provide sort of a tangible benefit for them. I mean, it's a great question, one I've never really thought much about, but I think it's just mostly about showing gratitude and appreciation for what they're doing for you, and being very respectful of their time, and finding ways to have maybe the conversation be two-way and not just tell me, help me, right? But figure out ways to sort of give back in terms of the conversation.
Abiola, I agree with Steve. I think it's a great question. I'm gonna ask Drew to feed in. Drew, do you have any tips?
Yeah. I've thought about this a lot, right? And I think the biggest thing that it's a relationship, right? If you want to build a mentor-mentee relationship, what are the things that work in your other relationships? Communication, right? I don't want to just come there and you put a nickel in the machine and I start talking, right? Like, we should communicate. We should communicate probably more than just when we meet for that 30-minute lunch. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there should be some modicum of engagement beyond that. The things that I feel like work in all relationships are definitely like, thank you. You know what I mean? So being appreciative, that doesn't mean that you have to gush over every time we have a conversation, but I want you to appreciate what it is that I'm trying to accomplish there. And then we don't talk enough about this, but you need to make it easy for me, honestly, because I got a lot going on. And you also need to you don't have to make it fun. Like, I don't think you have to come in and tell me, 15 jokes when you come, but it shouldn't be hard when we actually do get together. I shouldn't be doing all of the work. And it should be one of my favorite meetings of the day, right? And so I would say to anyone is that, like, it should be fun. It should be reciprocal. It should be like a real conversation. I tried to think of ways that I could have a reason to reach out to my mentors, right? Like, I saw this article about something that's going on in your wheelhouse. I thought that was interesting. It says, 1, I'm thinking about you. 2, I want to provide some sort of value. 3, remember me, let's keep this good thing we got going. And then 4, it says that I actually understand. It reminds me as the mentor of the why, because we're interested in some of those same things, right? And you can also feel free to, like, hey, I don't have a lot to say to him this week. Let's pivot until I'm ready to have a meaningful conversation.
Right.
Right.
Great, thank you. And if I could just take Abiola, to follow up a little bit on the gratitude piece, I just want to take a quick straw poll of our 3 panelists. How important is that thank you email? After an interview, after you spend some time, somebody emails with a question, does that matter to you? I've heard that it matters a lot, and it also doesn't matter. Cortland, how important is that thank you email?
No, it matters to me. It shows that you, again, have a sense of gratitude, which is important character trait that I look for. And it shows that, you're thoughtful in your approach, and you have enough presence of mind to thank the person that just had that conversation with you. So it's important.
How about you, Steve? Do you look for that thank you email?
It's important to me when there's thought put into it and the person actually says something that actually occurred during the interview or recognizes something that we talked about. If it's a form letter, I would rather I would not see it. So, my answer is a little bit nuanced, but anytime you're going to do a thank you of any kind, make it personal. Otherwise, don't bother, in my opinion.
Very good tip. And Drew?
It matters to me a lot. One of the most important things you can tell me besides I love you is thank you, right? Like, I don't know if it's because I'm Aries, but I think you should tell people thank you for all sorts of things, right?
Okay.
So like,
So I'm gonna send you a thank you email at the end of this webinar. So look out for that. Don't worry, I'll send you a thank you email. Thanks, Abiola, for that great question. Our next question is from Taylor Riller at Hofstra University, followed by Amia and Justin. But Taylor, please ask your question.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Taylor Riller, a rising senior at Hofstra University. I also am a Paragon 1 intern at the moment. And I'd like to know from all of the panelists, what was the experience that helped you get over the fear of rejection while searching for a mentor? I think on behalf of all the students here, that's like kind of one of our things, like, oh, what if they say no or they're too busy? And so I would just like to know your input on that.
Corlin, maybe I could ask you to answer that. You said your career has taken a number of changes. So I assume that there was some conflict there or some decision making. How do you suggest that young people get over that fear of rejection?
For sure. Now I'll be brief because I know we're coming up on time. I asked myself, what's the worst thing that can happen? It is for them to say no. And at which point I'll find someone else to ask the same question. So if your biggest fear is a fear of rejection, get comfortable with the other side of that, meaning there's always someone else who will say yes. You just have to find them, right?
Yeah, and Drew, any feedback? I mean, you had told the story about being rejected actually, but can you give us some tips about how to get over that, the question that Taylor's asking?
Just do it. You're gonna get rejected for jobs too, and then you still got to get a job, right? You still got to pay the bills. So you go out and you get you apply for the next opportunity. There will be a lot of no's, but the yeses will be so much more memorable 9 times out of 10 and much more beneficial. The universe is typically leading you towards where you're supposed to be. So that no is just redirection. It's not necessarily rejection. Course correction. That's all.
And it's not personal. I mean, it's fair to say it's not a personal rejection either, which is important to know. Steve, any insights from you about not being afraid of rejection?
I think that my insights would be very similar to Cortland and Drew. I would just add something that kind of I say to my team a lot is, and it kind of reflects the way that we need to work in a very fast-paced, agile kind of environment, is get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because there's really no such thing as sort of norm and knowing what to expect. So in that vein, I think get comfortable with the fact that rejection happens. It will happen to all of you. It has happened to all of us, and it's a shared experience we all have. So you're not alone in that, right? So sometimes knowing that you and others are experiencing some of the same things, even though it feels negative, can help you not let it get you down so much. It's not going to feel good. Just know that going into it, but don't let it stop you. And you'll be able to deal with other situations that happen in your life outside of mentoring in a much better way when you can get used to things like being rejected and hearing no and being turned down for a job opportunity, or all the other things that are going to happen to you, knowing they're going to happen and being able to let it roll off your shoulder and move on with your life and move on to the next thing. I mean, it's a skill you're going to have to develop anyway, so you might as well start now and start to get some practice with it. But and those no's and those rejections are there for a reason, and I fully agree with the comment about sort of the universe guiding you in the right direction. I mean, I firmly believe things happen for a reason, and so when you get no's and rejections, know that that's for a reason, and better things are on the horizon.
Right. And I see on the chat that Drew's saying that some no's are good. I completely agree. Some yeses are bad as well, in the same vein. So the next question is from Amia Johnson, followed by Justin, and hopefully with time, Ashley. So Amia, can you ask your question, please?
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Amaya Johnson from Howard University. I'm a junior business management major from Southern California. And first, on the theme of gratitude, thank you guys. I think it was Steve and Andrew for sharing that you are part of the LGBTQ community. It's always good to see that representation within the workforce. And my question for you guys today is, what are some tips that you could recommend when building a meaningful relationship with your mentor? Does that look like taking them out to lunch? Does that look like presenting an idea within the career field?
Yeah, that's a great question. Cortland, maybe you can give, I mean, it is a little bit about building the relationships, which we had talked about before, but any sort of tips along those lines?
Yeah, I think going back to perspective, right? And the fact that mentorship is a two-way street. adding, a unique perspective or having a meaningful conversation always is welcome. And it's how you judge, the trajectory of that mentorship relationship. If we're still talking about like very tactical, like basic things, and it's a year into that relationship, you either probably need to find a new mentor or vice versa, right? And so I want to have meaningful dialogue with whomever I choose to invest in, because then that's where the payoff comes, at least for me, right? I will not be judged based on my individual achievements when it is related to my career, right? My career will be judged and based on the impact that I've had on others, and I can only make and have that impact based on the quality of dialogue and conversations that we're able to have and facilitate. So again, selfishly, as a mentor, I'm looking to have that impact because that is my payoff, right? But also from a mentee's perspective, it's guiding me and teaching me and being very specific in how I can have that impact through those conversations.
Great, thanks, Cortland. And in the interest of time, thanks, Amaya, for that question. I'm going to try and squeeze in 2 more student questions before our hour is done. One from Justin Warren and the other one from Ashley. So Justin, can you please ask your question?
Hey, how's it going, y'all? I'm Justin from the University of California, Irvine. I am a senior level sociology major with a minor in digital information systems. I just wanted to say so far, thank you for your time. It's a lot of valuable life lessons that I will definitely be using in my career interest and pursuits. For my question, the one question that I have to ask is, if I still haven't figured out my personal career interest, will I still have the opportunity to find a great mentor?
That's a great question, Justin. Maybe real quick, I'm going to go through all 3 panelists. Steve, any quick insights to share with Justin on that?
So the question was, if you haven't figured out your definitive career path, can you still have a mentor? I mean, the answer is of course yes. I mean, because a mentor doesn't need to necessarily be specifically helping you with job-related questions. I mean, personal mentors are a thing. I mean, it doesn't matter, and your mentor can provide you advice in a number of different areas. So no matter if you have a specific career interest or not, I mean, it shouldn't hold you back from trying to find a mentor.
Drew, any input there from you?
I concur. Listen, mentors are sometimes help you out with what you want to do professionally. I have mentors that are my mentors in terms of just the type of man that I want to be, right? The type of leader I want to be, the type of community servant that I want to be. I think you should, think about what it is that you need in this moment right now, and then look at what you need from mentorship and then identify who that person is. Maybe what you need isn't about a job. It's about how you want to live your life, right? Or how you want to think about what ways you want to work, what you want to give in service to.
Great. And Cortland, any words of advice to Justin?
I would say yes. That's a firm yes. I would also say, I would challenge you though to have a perspective, have a hypothesis that you want to test out. Now, it doesn't have to be completely accurate or the right answer, but have some idea, have a point of view, right?
Great. And I see we have 1 more minute. So just in closing, maybe I can ask each of our panelists to any words of advice just in closing. Most of the participants are looking at a jobs market during a pandemic. They've faced so many challenges over the past year and a half. Any quick sort of advice or inspiration that you could provide our listeners? And I'll start with Steve.
Yeah, the one piece of advice that I give, I do a lot of, I'm the executive sponsor for Pride Recruiting in North America and at Accenture. And so I meet with a lot of undergraduate candidates that are trying to start entry-level jobs at Accenture. And the one piece of advice I give everyone consistently is be very open-minded as you're pursuing your first role. Because so many people come in, just using Accenture as an example, so many people come in with a very specific thing that they think they want to do based on what they studied or what they were involved in or whatever. And it's very limiting. And then I think they find that there's so many more opportunities than they probably ever imagined once they get into the work world. So again, just be really open-minded with your first experience. And it's sometimes okay to, again, be a little uncomfortable and do things that you didn't think you might enjoy or that you might not like, because sometimes those opportunities are what, or those things are what open up the most opportunities for you. So stay open-minded.
Thank you, Steve. Drew, any last words of advice to our audience?
It's never too early to start building your network. That's number one, because most of us get employment and opportunities based on people that we know. A lot of us do. And I would say definitely maximize your time while you're in undergrad. If you're still in undergrad, look for internships. I definitely learned more about the work that I actually did in internships than I did just in going to class every day. Like what your skills are, think about your skills and how you want to talk about them. You should always be able to tell the story of what you do well, right? Of what you can do well, how you can help some company or hiring manager solve a problem. It's a competitive market right now. You're going to get some no's, but stay in there. There's a ton of opportunity.
Agree. And Cortland, why don't you close it for us? Any
sure.
last words of advice?
Yeah, no. So I joined the workforce again in 2008 in the middle of a recession. So I have empathy, right, for what you all are facing into. So two things to focus on. Focus on the process, not the destination, because the destination will change, but the process will allow you to have the best probability of getting to that destination. So there's a process of excellence. There's a process of the grind, understanding the grind and committing to the grind. That's all process oriented, right? Don't focus on the destination, focus on the process. Second, focus on the skills and not titles, right? And so you should be in skill set acquisition mode, right? Not necessarily focused on the title that you want to have, because those titles are fleeting and they really don't mean anything, right? So to get to the destination, you have to have the skills necessary to traverse that path. If you don't have those skills, it's less likely you're going to get to where you need to be. So focus on the process and then focus on the skills, right?
Great, very great advice from Cortland. Just want to thank all three of our panelists for a really terrific session. There's so much helpful advice that was shared today. I just want to make sure that you guys join us next week for another episode of Bridges. It's getting hired at a place that includes you, with some really great panelists from the National Black MBA Association, Albertson, and Wayfair. And thank you to Cortland, to Drew, and to Steve for sharing your wisdom and insights with us today. I'm going to hand it back to Cody.
Thank you, Anna, Cortland, Steve, and Andrew. Thank you so much for your time. And Anna said it best. We'll see you next week, Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern time, everyone. Thank you, and be well. Have a great weekend.